My name is Colleen, 32 years old, and I used to think family loyalty meant giving everything. For 3 years, I poured my hard-earned money into helping my older brother, paying his rent, covering his bills, even bailing him out when he claimed he was broke. I believed every sob story, every desperate call, thinking I was saving him from ruin. But last summer, at our family's 4th of July cookout, the truth hit me like a freight train. There he was pulling up in a sleek, shiny luxury car, flashing a designer watch and bragging about his latest trip to Hawaii. My stomach churned as I realized I'd been bankrolling his lavish lifestyle while scraping by myself. I couldn't stay silent. Enough, I snapped, staring him down. That's when my dad exploded, his voice booming across the backyard. "How dare you refuse to help your own brother?" The whole family froze, eyes on me. I stood my ground, heart pounding, and shot back. Why not? That moment changed everything. What happened next flipped my world upside down, exposing lies and forcing me to make the toughest choice of my life. Stick around to find out how I took back control. Do you think I was right or wrong to refuse my brother? Comment below and share the reason behind your choice. Growing up in an Indianapolis suburb, Derek and I were like oil and water. I was the kid with my nose in books, always planning my next step, while my brother, 3 years older, coasted through life. He'd charm his way out of chores, skip homework, and still get a pat on the back from dad and mom. I worked hard, got straight A's, and dreamed of a stable career. Derek. He wanted the spotlight without the sweat. By high school, he was sneaking out to parties while I stayed home studying for exams. Fast forward to my mid-20s, I graduated with a finance degree from Purdue and landed a solid job at a bank in downtown Indianapolis. My salary wasn't massive, about $100,000 a year, but it was enough to build a life. Derek, though, bounced between freelance graphic design gigs, never sticking with one long enough to make real money. He'd call it keeping his options open. I called it dodging responsibility. Dad, a retired salesman, and Mom, a homemaker, always had his back. "He's just finding his way," they'd say, brushing off his job hopping like it was a phase. Meanwhile, they leaned on me to be the reliable one, the one who showed up for every family event, paid my bills on time, and never asked for help. It started 3 years ago, right after I turned 29. Derek called me late one night, voice shaky, saying he couldn't cover his rent. "I'm behind by $1,000, he said, swearing it was a one-time thing. He'd just lost a big client and his landlord was threatening to kick him out. I felt a pang of guilt. After all, he was family, so I wired him the money, thinking I was saving him from a rough patch. Mom called the next day, her tone soft but firm. "You did the right thing, Colleen. He needs you." Dad echoed her, saying family sticks together no matter what. That first payment opened the floodgates. A few weeks later, Derek needed $500 for a car repair, then $300 for a utility bill. Each time he had a story: clients ghosting him, unexpected expenses, bad luck. I'd sit at my desk staring at my bank account, watching my savings for a down payment on a condo shrink. But I kept sending the money, telling myself it was temporary. Derek always promised to pay me back, saying, "You're a lifesaver, sis. I'll get you back soon." I believed him, or at least I wanted to. What stung the most was how Dad and Mom acted like it was my job to bail him out. At Sunday dinners, they'd praise Derek's creative spirit while nudging me to keep helping. "He's trying so hard," Mom would say, her eyes pleading. Dad would nod, adding, "You're doing well, Colleen. You can afford it." Their words hit hard, like I owed Derek my success. I started skipping my own plans, weekend trips with friends, new clothes, even small things like a gym membership to cover his bills. My life felt like it was on hold, all because I was the responsible one. Looking back, I see how they played favorites. Derek could do no wrong in their eyes, even when he was clearly taking advantage. I didn't question it. Then I just kept writing checks, thinking I was holding the family together. But those payments were building a house of cards, and it was only a matter of time before it all came crashing down. By the second year, helping Derek was like a second job. What started as a one-time favor turned into a monthly ritual. My phone would buzz with a new text from Derek, always with some fresh crisis. Lost another client, need $800 for rent he'd write, or car broke down. Can you spot me 500? Each time his voice carried that same desperate edge, spinning tales of bad luck, freelance gigs drying up, medical bills piling up, or utilities about to be cut off. I'd sit in my cubicle at the bank staring at my budget and wire the money. He'd always end our calls with a promise, "I'll pay you back next month, Colleen, I swear." But next month never came. Those promises stacked up like unpaid invoices, and my bank account took the hit. I wasn't just covering his rent, about $1,000 a month for his downtown Indianapolis apartment. There were utility bills, $300 here, $400 there. Once he needed $600 to fix his car's transmission, claiming he couldn't get to client meetings without it. I sent the money, believing he was scraping by, barely surviving. But every transfer chipped away at my own dreams. I'd been saving for a condo, a cozy 2-bedroom in a quiet indie suburb, but those funds dwindled fast. My real estate agent stopped calling after I canceled our third house hunting trip. My 401k contributions dropped to the bare minimum, just enough to get the company match. I even bailed on a girls' trip to Nashville with my college friends, telling them I was too busy when I was really too broke. The worst part wasn't the money, it was the pressure from Dad and Mom. They'd call me after every payment, their voices dripping with approval. "You're keeping the family together," Mom would say, her tone warm but heavy with expectation. Dad was blunter, "Derek's trying, Colleen. You've got a good job, so help him out." Their words made my stomach twist. It was like my success was a family ATM and Derek had the PIN. At one point, I tallied it up, over $30,000 in 2 years, and that was a conservative estimate. I stopped checking my savings balance because it hurt too much to see. I tried talking to Derek about slowing down the handouts. "Can you cut back on expenses?" I asked during one call, my voice tight. He sighed, long and dramatic. "You don't get it, sis. Freelancing is feast or famine. I'm in a famine right now." He'd spin another story, a client bailed, a project fell through, and I'd cave, sending another few $100s. I told myself I was being a good sister, that family came first. But deep down, I felt trapped, like I was carrying his weight and mine. Dad and Mom didn't help. At every family gathering, they'd steer the conversation to Derek's struggles. "He's got so much talent," Mom would say, passing the mashed potatoes. "He just needs a break." Dad would nod, adding, "You're doing the right thing by helping Colleen." Their praise for Derek and their expectations of me were like a script they never deviated from. I started dreading those dinners, knowing they'd end with another subtle nudge to keep the money flowing. Once I hinted at stopping the payments. Mom's face fell and she said, "Family doesn't abandon each other." Dad just stared, his silence louder than words. I wasn't just helping Derek. I was trying to prove I was the dependable daughter, the one who never let the family down. But every dollar I sent him was a piece of my future I was giving away. I didn't know then that those sacrifices were building toward a breaking point, one that would change how I saw my family forever. Last summer, I hosted a 4th of July cookout for the family. I spent weeks planning, wanting to bring everyone together in the backyard of my parents' suburban Indianapolis home. The grill was sizzling, kids were running around, and my relatives filled the picnic tables, laughing over plates of ribs and coleslaw. I was juggling platters of food, trying to keep everyone happy, when a low rumble caught my ear. I turned to see a sleek black luxury sedan pulling into the driveway, its chrome rims glinting in the sunlight. Out stepped my brother Derek in crisp designer sunglasses and a flashy watch that looked like it cost at least $1,000. My jaw tightened. This was the guy I'd been bailing out for years, the one who claimed he could barely pay his bills. Derek sauntered over, grinning wide, and started working the crowd like a celebrity. "Just got back from Hawaii," he announced loud enough for everyone to hear. Snorkeling in Maui was unreal. My cousins nodded impressed, while my aunt raised her eyebrows, clearly curious about his sudden wealth. I stood frozen, a tray of burgers in my hands as his words sank in. Hawaii. That kind of trip cost thousands, and I'd just sent him $800 for emergency car repairs a month ago. My chest tightened with a mix of confusion and suspicion. Then my cousin Shane, always blunt, leaned over and muttered, "How's Derek affording all this? That watch alone is worth more than my car." His words hit like a spark. Shane, in his late 20s and scraping by as a mechanic, wasn't one to mince words. I glanced at Derek, now showing off his watch to my uncle, and felt a knot form in my stomach. The pieces weren't adding up. For 3 years, I'd been draining my savings to keep him afloat, thousands of dollars for rent, utilities, you name it. Yet here he was, living like he'd won the lottery. I couldn't let it slide. After the burgers were served, I pulled Derek aside to the edge of the yard, out of earshot from the family. My hands were shaking, but I kept my voice steady. "Derek, how did you pay for that car?" I asked, nodding toward the sedan. He shrugged, casual as ever. "Found a good deal online," he said, adjusting his sunglasses. "What about Hawaii?" I pressed my tone sharper. "That's not cheap." He smirked, brushing me off. "Relax, sis. I had some savings, scored a discount flight." His answers were too slick, too vague, and they only fueled my doubts. I crossed my arms, staring him down. "You told me you were broke, Derek. I've been sending you money every month." He shifted, his smile faltering for a split second. "Look, I'm getting back on my feet," he said, voice low. "You're doing fine, right? Why make a big deal out of it?" His dismissal stung, like I was overreacting for questioning him. I wanted to push harder, but my uncle called us back to the table for dessert, and Derek slipped away, blending into the crowd. As I watched him laugh with my cousins, I felt a sinking realization. All those late-night calls, all those sob stories, they weren't adding up. I'd been pouring my life into his, and he was using me to fund a lifestyle I couldn't even afford for myself. After the fireworks, I couldn't keep quiet anymore. The glow of the sparklers had faded, but the fire in my chest was burning hotter than ever. I spotted him by the dessert table, joking with our cousins like he didn't have a care in the world. I marched over, grabbed his arm, and pulled him to the far corner of the backyard, away from the family's chatter. My heart was pounding, but I wasn't backing down. "Derek, tell me the truth." I said, my voice low and sharp. "Where's all this money coming from? The car, the watch, the vacation? How are you paying for it?" He leaned back, crossing his arms, and gave me that same smug smirk from earlier. "I told you, sis. I got some good deals," he said, his tone almost mocking. I wasn't buying it. "Good deals don't cover a luxury sedan and a trip to Maui," I shot back, stepping closer. "I've been sending you thousands, rent bills, car repairs. You said you were broke." His eyes flickered just for a moment before he shrugged. "All right, fine," he said, dropping his voice. "I've been using your money to live a little. You make good money, Colleen. Why not share a little? I deserve to enjoy life too." His words hit like a slap. My hands clenched into fists as I processed what he'd just admitted. For 3 years, I'd sacrificed my savings, my dreams, my future, thinking I was saving him from ruin. And here he was, treating my money like his personal slush fund for vacations and designer gear. "You used me," I said, my voice trembling with rage. "I gave up my condo, my retirement fund, everything for you." Derek rolled his eyes like I was being dramatic. "Come on, you're doing fine at the bank. It's not like you're hurting." Before I could respond, Dad's heavy footsteps crunched across the grass. He'd overheard us, his face red with anger. "What's going on here?" he demanded, glaring at me. I tried to explain, but Derek jumped in, spinning his version. "She's freaking out over nothing, Dad. I just got a few nice things." I cut him off, my voice rising. "Nice things? I paid for those, Derek, thousands of dollars." That's when Dad exploded, his voice booming across the yard. "How dare you refuse to help your brother?" he shouted, pointing at me. "He's family, Colleen. You don't turn your back on family. Mom hurried over, her face twisted with disappointment. Colleen, why are you being so selfish? She said, her voice softer, but cutting just as deep. Derek's trying to build a life. You've always been the strong one. You should be proud to help him. The rest of the family, cousins, aunts, uncles, went quiet watching the scene unfold. I felt their eyes on me, judging, waiting for me to cave like always. But something snapped inside me. I was done being the family ATM, done letting them guilt me into carrying Derek's weight. I took a deep breath and looked straight at Derek, then at Dad and Mom. I'm done, I said, my voice steady despite the chaos in my chest. No more money. No more rent payments. No more bailing you out, Derek. I'm cutting you off. The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. Derek's smirk vanished, replaced by a look of panic. You can't do that, he stammered. I need that money. Dad's face darkened and he stepped closer. You're abandoning your brother, he growled. Mom clutched his arm, whispering, Colleen, think about what you're doing. I didn't flinch. I've thought about it, I said, staring them down. I've given him over $30,000 and he's been lying to me, to all of us. The family gasped, murmurs rippling through the crowd. My aunt looked shocked. My uncle shook his head, but Dad and Mom stood firm, their loyalty to Derek unwavering. Derek tried to play it off, laughing nervously. She's exaggerating, he said to the family, but no one was buying it. I turned and walked back to the house, my legs shaking but my resolve solid. I'd just drawn a line in the sand and there was no going back. The weeks after the cookout were a storm of texts and calls. Derek didn't waste time. The next morning my phone lit up with his messages, each one more desperate than the last. Colleen, you can't cut me off like this, he wrote. I'm in deep trouble without your help. By noon, the tone shifted to threats. If you don't help, I'll tell everyone you turned your back on me. He texted, his words dripping with venom. I stared at the screen, my stomach churning. I'd stood up to him at the cookout, but I hadn't expected him to fight this dirty. Then came the Facebook post. I was scrolling through my feed one evening when I saw it, a long, dramatic rant from Derek painting himself as the victim. My sister abandoned me when I needed her most, he wrote, claiming I'd left him struggling to survive while I lived it up with my bank job. He conveniently left out the part about his luxury car, designer watch, and Hawaii trip, all funded by my money. The post got dozens of likes and comments, mostly from distant relatives and his friends. That's awful, Derek, one wrote. Family should stick together, said another. My inbox started filling with messages from cousins and family friends asking why I'd betrayed my brother. Each one felt like a punch, twisting the knife of guilt and anger. Dad and Mom piled on the pressure. Dad called me the day after the post, his voice cold and clipped. You're tearing this family apart, Colleen, he said. Refusing to help Derek is a betrayal of everything we stand for. I tried to explain he'd lied, used my money for luxuries, but Dad cut me off. He's your brother. You don't get to judge him. Mom's calls were worse, her voice trembling with disappointment. How could you do this to us? She asked. You're acting like you're better than the rest of the family. Their words echoed the same refrain I'd heard for years. Family comes first, no matter the cost. But this time, I wasn't caving. I needed clarity, so I turned to my best friend Vivian, a sharp-witted accountant who'd always had my back. We met at a coffee shop downtown and I poured out everything: Derek's lies, the family's guilt trips, the Facebook post. Vivian listened, her brow furrowed, then pulled out her laptop. Let's figure out exactly how much you've given him, she said, her voice calm but determined. We went through 3 years of bank statements, emails, and text messages where I'd sent Derek money. Rent payments of $1,000 a month, utility bills averaging $400, car repairs, medical emergencies. It added up fast. By the time we finished, the total hit me like a brick: $60,000. $60,000 of my savings gone to fund Derek's lavish lifestyle while I'd given up my own dreams. Vivian leaned back, her eyes wide. Colleen, this is insane, she said. He's been manipulating you, and your parents are enabling it. She pointed to the numbers on her spreadsheet, each one a reminder of the sacrifices I'd made: canceled house hunting trips, slashed retirement contributions, skipped vacations. I felt a wave of nausea, not just at the money, but at how I'd let myself be used. Vivian grabbed my hand. You did the right thing at the cookout, she said. But you need to hold that line. They're going to keep pushing. She was right. The calls and texts didn't stop. Derek sent another message begging for just one more payment to cover his rent, promising he'd change. Dad left voicemails, his tone growing harsher. You're breaking your mother's heart, he said in one. Mom's messages were softer but just as heavy. We raised you to be generous, Colleen, she wrote. Don't let Derek down now. Even some cousins chimed in, swayed by Derek's post, asking why I was being so cold. The pressure was suffocating, like the whole family was closing ranks against me. But seeing those numbers, $60,000, lit a fire in me. I wasn't just fighting for my money, I was fighting for my life. 3 months later, Derek's life started unraveling. I'd had enough of his manipulation and the family's pressure, so I took action. Sitting at my desk one evening, I logged into my bank account and canceled every automatic payment tied to Derek: his rent of $1,000 a month, utility bills averaging $400, and a car loan payment of $600. My finger hovered over the confirm button, a mix of relief and guilt washing over me. But I clicked it, severing the financial lifeline I'd provided for years. No more bailing him out. No more draining my savings to fund his lies. It didn't take long for the fallout to hit. Derek's landlord evicted him from his downtown Indianapolis apartment after he missed 2 months' rent. I heard through a cousin that he'd sold his sleek luxury sedan, the one he'd bragged about at the cookout, to cover debts. He picked up a part-time job at a local electronics store, working the register for minimum wage, a far cry from the freelance graphic design gigs he used to chase. I didn't feel sorry for him. He'd made his choices using my $60,000 to live a fantasy while I sacrificed my own dreams. Still, knowing he was struggling stung like a bruise I couldn't ignore. The family's reaction was relentless. Dad called me almost daily, his voice thick with anger. You've ruined your brother's life, he said during one call, his words cutting deep. You had the means to help, and you chose to let him fall. Mom's calls were quieter but no less painful. I can't believe you'd let Derek lose everything, she said, her voice breaking. We didn't raise you to be this heartless. Their accusations piled up, each one trying to pull me back into the role of the dutiful daughter. Most of my cousins, swayed by Derek's social media sob story, sent texts accusing me of abandoning the family. The weight of their judgment was crushing, making me question if I'd done the right thing. But not everyone turned against me. My Aunt Mildred called one afternoon, her voice warm and steady. You did what you had to, Colleen, she said. Derek needed to face reality, and you don't owe him your life. My Uncle Leroy echoed her, pulling me aside at a family lunch. We've seen how they've treated you, he said, his eyes kind but firm. You're not the bad guy here. Their support was a lifeline, a reminder that I wasn't alone. They'd watched Derek's charade unfold at the cookout and knew I'd been stretched too thin for too long. Their words gave me the strength to keep going, even when the rest of the family closed ranks. To make sense of it all, I started therapy with Dr. Brooks, a calm, insightful psychologist recommended by Vivian. In our first session, I spilled everything: the years of payments, Derek's lies, my parents' guilt trips, the Facebook post. Dr. Brooks listened quietly, then leaned forward. Your family's been manipulating you, Colleen, she said. They've normalized Derek's behavior and made you feel responsible for his choices. Her words were a revelation, like a fog lifting. She helped me see how my parents' constant praise of Derek and pressure on me had warped my sense of duty. I'd been conditioned to believe I owed him my success, that his failures were my burden to fix. Over weeks of sessions, Dr. Brooks guided me through untangling those expectations. We talked about how my parents' favoritism had shaped my role as the reliable one always expected to sacrifice. I realized I'd been chasing their approval even when it meant giving up my own goals. The $60,000 I'd lost wasn't just money, it was years of my life spent propping up someone who didn't respect me. Therapy wasn't easy. It forced me to confront painful truths about my family. But it also gave me clarity. I wasn't responsible for Derek's choices, and I didn't have to carry the family's expectations anymore. By the end of those 3 months, I felt lighter, like I'd shed a weight I'd carried for years. Derek was still struggling, and my parents were still angry, but I was done letting their judgment define me. Mildred and Leroy's support combined with Dr. Brooks's guidance showed me I could stand my ground. I was ready to rebuild my life, even if it meant facing more backlash from the family I'd once tried so hard to please. 1 year after that cookout, I stood in my new condo. The keys jingled in my hand as I walked through the cozy two-bedroom in an Indianapolis suburb, sunlight streaming through the windows. After years of funneling money to Derek, I'd finally saved enough for the down payment. My real estate agent had called it a steal, and for the first time in ages, I felt like I was building something for myself. I'd also restarted my retirement contributions, boosting them beyond the bare minimum. Each deposit felt like a step toward reclaiming my future, one I'd almost lost to my brother's lies. Derek, meanwhile, was still struggling. My cousin Shane mentioned he was living in a cramped studio apartment, scraping by on his electronics store job. He hadn't changed, still chasing quick fixes instead of real solutions. I heard he'd tried borrowing from other relatives, but most turned him down after his Facebook stunt backfired. I didn't feel triumph, just a quiet resolve. His choices weren't my responsibility anymore. I'd blocked his number months ago, tired of his begging texts and veiled threats. It wasn't easy, but cutting him off was like lifting a weight I'd carried too long. My relationship with my parents was strained. I limited contact to short calls, keeping conversations surface level to avoid their guilt trips. Dad still brought up Derek, saying I'd let the family down. Mom sent occasional texts hinting I should reconsider my stance. Their words stung, but I held firm. My Aunt Mildred and Uncle Leroy remained my anchors, checking in with supportive messages. "You're doing what's right for you," Mildred said during one call, her voice warm. Their encouragement reminded me I wasn't alone, even if most of the family kept their distance. The biggest lesson came from those hard years. Setting boundaries is about protecting your own worth, even if it means losing people you love. I'd spent too long believing family came first no matter the cost, but giving up $60,000, my dreams and my peace to prop up Derek's lies, taught me otherwise. Boundaries aren't selfish, they're survival. If I could go back, I'd tell my younger self to say no sooner, to value my own goals as much as I valued family. I'd tell anyone listening, don't let guilt trap you into carrying someone else's burdens. Protect your peace even if it means walking away.